Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 311. Hope you had a great week. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining me. I have a really good podcast for you today, but I'm more excited about the podcast I'm going to do on Monday. We're still going to be talking about the media. I'm going to pick up where I left off in the last podcast today, and then we're going to wrap things up. And today's podcast is going to lead into Monday's podcast. And again, I'm more excited about what I'm going to share with you guys on Monday. But today I want to get back, like I said, into what we've been talking about in the past couple of podcasts. We've been talking about the media. We've been talking about the consolidation of ownership of the media and the vacuum that the legacy media has left. The corporate media left a vacuum, and that vacuum was filled by alternative media, podcasts, mainly podcasts, but TikTok videos, and people went to look for other ways to inform themselves because the legacy media, the corporate media, left a vacuum. This is one, I'm going to start with this today, and let's get right into it. No need to dilly-dally. This is one of the most popular podcasts in the countries. It's called Pod Save America, and it's hosted by a couple of young white guys who worked in the Obama administration and helped get Obama elected and reelected. And they had Robert Francis, Texas's Robert Francis from El Paso, was on Pod Save America. I want you to take a listen to what he says.
Just to be clear, Biden should not have run again. And to be even more clear, he failed this country in the most important job that he had. In fact, the entire rationale for his presidency the first time, and the rationale he tried to sell us on for his attempt to run for re-election. Only I can stop Donald Trump. And he failed to do that. And it's not just you and me, but our kids and grandkids and the generations that follow that might have to pay the price for this. We might very well lose, the greatest country that this world has ever known.
Completely hyperbolic. But he says that Joe Biden is a failure. He classifies, nobody was saying this before the election. They were trying to get Joe Biden over the finish line before he had the horrible debate performance, and everyone had to be real about the fact that he was in cognitive decline. Before the debate, that was just, right-wing talking points to take down Joe Biden. But after the debate against Donald Trump in June of last year, everyone had to admit what was going on with his cognitive decline. So now we're over 3 months into the Trump presidency, and everybody's pointing the fingers. The people in the Democratic Party, like Robert Francis here, pointing the fingers at Joe Biden's family and his inner circle is what they're saying. Again, we have this book coming out next week from Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. It's supposed to expose all of this cover up. The media wants to point the finger at the Biden administration and his campaign and his insiders and even family members, and take no responsibility for themselves. We're getting ready to get into this. But Beto O'Rourke is now saying, and he's not the only one saying this, now saying that Biden was a failure. Biden was a failure. Beto O'Rourke, Robert Francis.
For his attempt to run for re-election. Only I can stop Donald Trump. And he failed to do that. And it's not just you and me, but our kids and grandkids and the generations that follow that might have to pay the price for this. We might very well lose, the greatest country that this world has ever known.
And I think that I love the fact that he's saying this on Pod Save America, because like I told you, Pod Save America is a podcast that is hosted by people who were in the Obama administration when Joe Biden was vice president. And Obama had a lot to do with Joe Biden becoming president. We'll talk about that next week. But I saw this morning. I'd already put the podcast together, so I don't want to spend very much time on this. But I saw this morning. I said, I got to start with this in today's podcast because this really, and it's not only what Beto O'Rourke's saying here. I mean, Beto O'Rourke is responded to by Rhonda Fox. And Rhonda Fox was the women's engagement director for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And she responds to Beto O'Rourke. We're going to listen to or read her response in just a moment. But let's listen to the rest of Robert Francis.
We might very well lose, the greatest country that this world has ever known. And it might be in part because of the decision that Biden and those around him made to run for re-election.
Those around him.
Having an open primary where the greatest talent that the Democratic Party...
Instead of having an open primary, was that Biden's decision? Or maybe he's talking about before, but it doesn't matter. It wasn't Biden's decision before he dropped out. And then we're going to get into this in the next podcast too, because Amy Klobuchar said that after Biden dropped out that we should have had an open primary. But that's the DNC's responsibility to decide if they're going to have an open primary. It's not Biden's responsibility to decide if they're going to have a primary. The DNC decided not to have a primary. The DNC decided not to host debates. And the DNC is supposed to be separate from the Biden campaign. Robert Francis?
To run for re-election instead of having an open primary where the greatest talent that the Democratic Party can muster could be on that stage to have a competition of ideas and track record.
Yeah, the DNC didn't want to do that.
Not just Democrats, but the people of this country who did want change. I mean, if anything was clear coming out of 2024, they wanted change.
2024? We voted for change back in 2008, buddy. We voted for change you can believe in back in 2008, 2004. What are you talking about? Or 2024. I mean, that's 16 years later. We're still, people are still voting for change 16 years after Barack Obama ran on change you can believe in.
And really excite not just Democrats, but the people of this country who did want change. I mean, if anything was clear coming out of 2024, they wanted change. And to literally run the oldest guy who many people accurately, to your point, said, I just don't think he is capable of doing this. And I know that I saw the congresswoman and the congressman on CNN saying he's running circles around us in the briefing rooms behind closed doors. It doesn't add up with what I'm seeing with my own lying eyes.
Why don't you come out and say this before the election, Beto? Why don't you come out and say this before the DNC decided not to hold any primary? Why don't you complain when the DNC said we're not going to hold any debates? Why don't you come out and say this? Because right now it's safe for him to say this, and he couldn't have said this a year ago because he would have been ostracized. He would have been demonized by the radicals in his own party. Okay, now let's read what Rhonda Fox. Again, Rhonda Fox was the women's engagements director for Joe Biden, black woman. And what she says is, we lost the campaign before it even began. Not because of Biden's age, but because we insisted on pouring resources into paid media and focus groups and to test slogans, while the right wing was constructing one of the most effective media ecosystems in modern political history, a well-funded, far-reaching manosphere. This digital echo chamber flooded every corner of the internet with disinformation. It wasn't disinformation. A lot of it was real information that was highlighting the disinformation coming from legacy media, penetrating the platforms where Americans increasingly turn for news, culture, and community. They defined our positions on the economy, transgender rights, immigration, and even the candidate's age before we ever entered the conversation. So listen to what she's saying, that they define our positions on the candidate's age. What are you talking about? His age is his age. He exposed himself during the debate. What are you talking about, lady? But she's part of the problem. We're going to talk about this next week. That Rhonda Fox and people like Rhonda Fox are a huge part of their problem. And this is the last paragraph of her post in reaction to Robert Francis. Donald Trump didn't steal votes. He stole the airwaves. He captured the new media landscapes, podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, X, while dismantling trust in the mainstream media. Well, no, lady, he didn't dismantle trust in the mainstream media. Trust in the mainstream media was dismantled by the mainstream media because, again, the premise is that the mainstream media, the legacy media, the corporate media, this media cross ownership, the media that's owned by these corporations, Disney, Netflix, NBC Universal, Warner Brothers, these very few corporations that own all of the legacy media, they destroyed their own credibility and they left a vacuum, and people went to these other platforms, the alternative media, because there was a vacuum. They went to go get informed because these people were the ones giving out the disinformation. Rhonda. The legacy media was the ones giving out the disinformation. So we were talking about in the last podcast, the concentration of media ownership, how concentration of media ownership in America changed after it was deregulated in 1996 with the 1996 Telecommunications Act, which was signed by William Jefferson Clinton. And it allowed for the cross media ownership for these few companies, these few corporations to own the majority of the media. And I was trying to explain to you in the last podcast the effects of that, how you can see the effects of the corporation reaching down into the outlets, controlling what they report, telling them what to say, giving them scripts that the talking heads on the media don't say what they want to say. They say what the corporation allows them to say and tells them to say. And if they're trying to report, like the last clip that we reported on in the last podcast was the ABC reporter that went out and dug up this story on Epstein before the Epstein story had even come to light. The woman, Virginia, that just committed suicide. She was in hiding for 12 years. The ABC reporter convinced her to come out of hiding to tell her story, and she just committed suicide. Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. Don't you think that it's crazy that the Virginia committed suicide and Epstein committed suicide and that ABC Disney is killing this story? But I explained that in the last podcast, how the media controls the narrative. And the premise, again, is that the corporate legacy media, these corporations have an agenda, and their agenda is the same agenda of the Democratic Party. So we were talking about Dana Walden in the last podcast, and I didn't mention her name, but I was explaining to you how Kamala Harris's best friend is a lead executive for the Disney Corporation. Not only a lead executive, Dana Walden here. She's co-chair of Disney Entertainment and Walt Disney Company. As a co-chairman of Disney Entertainment, Dana Walden oversees Disney's full portfolio of entertainment, media, news, and content business globally. They're saying that Bob Iger, who's the current CEO of Disney, his contract with Disney is up in 2026, next year, and she's going to be the new CEO. She's the front runner. Dana Walden is the front runner to be the new CEO of Disney. And when I say that her and Kamala Harris are best friends, I just want to show you this. Politics. Right here, it says, Walden has donated to the Democratic Party, politicians, and has hosted fundraisers, events for the party. So she's dying-the-wool Democrat. She's going to be the next CEO of Disney. She and her husband have also been longtime friends of Kamala Harris and her husband, Doug Emhoff. Doug Emhoff is of Jewish descent. He's a Jewish man. And Dana is also Jewish. And Dana introduced Kamala Harris to her husband. That's how Kamala Harris met her husband, is because Dana introduced her to Doug Emhoff. So that's how close they are. So do you think that she has any influence over the programming at Disney and what goes on as far as ABC News and The View and all these other outlets? I mean, is she going to let them be critical of Joe Biden or Kamala Harris? No, she's got an agenda, and her agenda is the same agenda as the Democratic Party. Susan Rice, these are just two examples. There's many more examples. Susan Rice, she's in the Obama administration. This is her husband, Canadian born. Ian, what's his last name? Ian, I forget Ian's last name. What's his last name? Cameron. Ian Cameron, Canadian born. That's Susan Rice's husband. He's executive producer at ABC when they were in the White House. So they're going to be controlling what ABC, and this is just two examples. This is across all of the legacy media. This is why the legacy media, their agenda lines up with the agenda of the Democratic Party. I mean, that's not the only reason why, but this shows you the influence. And we were playing in the last podcast about Sinclair Media and how everyone freaks out when Boris, forget his last name, from the Trump administration goes to run Sinclair Media, and everyone's clutching their pearls. Oh, the influence of the Trump administration on, like, what about this influence right here? What about this influence? People, you got to be honest with yourselves. So Jasmine Crockett, these people just don't get it. Jasmine Crockett, she was on some podcast last week, and she says this. Take a listen.
And so the thing is this. Anybody that did their research voted the right way. Mm-hmm. The people that had the information.
When she says voted the right way, she means voted for Kamala Harris in the last election. So the people who got the right information voted for Kamala Harris. And what she's talking about is that people that got their news from legacy media, from Dana. If you got your news from Dana, you voted for Kamala Harris. Duh. Why wouldn't you vote for Kamala Harris if you're getting your news from her best friend? Makes sense that you would vote for Kamala Harris the right way, as Jasmine Crockett says here, if you're getting your news from Dana.
Is this. Anybody that did their research voted the right way. Mm-hmm. The people that had the information, they voted the right way. These are facts. The more educated voters and the voters that went to the legacy media, frankly, they voted the right way. It's the ones that were getting the fake news or the lies. They were the ones that were voting the wrong way.
So what she says is very important. It's the same thing that Roland Martin said in the clip I played 2 podcasts ago. She's absolutely right. The polling shows this, that people who get their news from legacy media voted for Kamala Harris. Absolutely right. And the people that got their news from alternative media, the media that Rhonda talks about in her post responding to Robert Francis, people who went to YouTube, to podcasts, to TikTok, yeah, they didn't vote for Kamala Harris. And that's the huge problem that these people don't understand. She's saying this like, do they not understand what they're saying? Because you got a huge problem because nobody's tuning in to legacy media anymore. That's why Kamala Harris lost. That's why the approval rating of the Democratic Party is in the gutter, along with the approval rating of legacy media. Legacy media's approval rating is in the gutter. This Gallup poll, I said it came out. I think it came out at the end of last year, like November or December. So it's not that old of a poll. And I'm sure these numbers are more drastic for legacy media now because they've only, accentuated their loss in trust by the exposure of Joe Biden and what's going on now with these books that they're coming out with and other things where the media is the trend for the media. This is the trend line. The trend for the media is down. This is 31% who say that they have a great deal or fair amount of trust in legacy media. That's not enough, Jasmine. That's not enough to push Kamala Harris or anyone else over the line, with 31% of Americans saying that they have a great deal of fair amount of trust. Now, this line right here that's going up, that trend line that goes up, 36% say that they have none at all. No trust in the media at all. 36%. I'm sure that seems low. But that's your problem, lady. That's your problem. No one's tuning into the mainstream media, and that's why she lost. I said it many times before the election, that this election is going to be about people who trust the mainstream media and people who don't trust the mainstream media. And I want to explain real quick. I've talked about this quote from Tragedy and Hope many times. Tragedy and Hope was a book written by Jesuit Georgetown professor Carol Quigley. And he writes in Tragedy and Hope that the argument that the two parties should represent opposite ideals and policies is a foolish idea. Instead, the two parties, this cuts out some of the quotes, but instead, the two parties should be almost identical so the American people can throw the rascals out, I'm going to cite this quote again in the next podcast, and this isn't cited correctly here, but it says, let me just continue reading. So the American people can throw the rascals out at any election without leading to any profound or extensive shifts in policy. That's change. That's the change that people wanted. When people voted for Barack Obama in 2008, change, you can leave it. We voted for shifts in policy. We wanted change in policy, shifts in policy. And what Carol Quigley is saying here is that the two parties are designed to be almost identical. So the American people can throw the rascals out, which he puts that in quote, because that's what the American people are saying when they're going to vote, to throw the rascals out. And then you just get new rascals with the same policy. There is no shift in policy. Then it should be possible to replace it every 4 years if necessary by another party, which will be none of these things, but will still pursue with new vigor approximately the same basic policies. No new policies, same policy. So the reason that I'm bringing this quote back up is because I want you to understand when I say that the mainstream legacy media, the corporate media, that they have an agenda and their agenda aligns with the Democratic Party. It aligns with the Democratic Parties because that's where the corporate establishment finds a home now. That's where the military industrial complex finds a home now. It's where big pharma finds a home now. Media corporations. This is why during the last election that you have people like Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney endorsing Kamala Harris, because it doesn't have anything to do with the party. That when I say that the corporate media has an agenda and their agenda is aligned with the Democratic Party today, back during the Bush administration, the corporate media, their agenda aligned with the Bush administration, especially when after 9/11, when he was lying us into the war in Iraq. So the mainstream legacy media is the corporate establishment. And right now they find a home in the Democratic Party. And that's why their agenda aligns with the Democratic Party. It's not that they just align with the Democratic Party. They don't have any party allegiance. Their allegiance is to their profits and maximizing the power of the corporation. Because fascism is the corporation and the state merged together. All right, let's get into, so next week, they're coming out with this book. There was a few excerpts from the book that they dropped this week. And the original sin, like I said in the last podcast, they got a picture. This is Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson's book. They're both from the media. Alex Thompson from Axios, Jake Tapper from CNN. And they have a picture of Joe Biden on the jacket of their book with his hands over his eyes. And I said that this should be a picture of Jake Tapper with his hands over his eyes. This should be a picture of all of the legacy media with their hands over their eyes, not just Joe Biden. And that's one of the things that you are seeing going on with when this book's coming out now and other books are coming out now talking about Joe Biden's cognitive decline and the fact that he had no business being president, let alone running for another 4 years. I mean, this is the exact same thing that happened to Woodrow Wilson. This is the exact reason that the 25th Amendment was ratified, to prevent someone like Jill Biden running the presidency behind her feeble husband's back. But the media is trying to say, oh, it was all Jill Biden. It was the Biden's family and their inner circle, and we didn't know anything. No, you guys knew and you covered up. I'm going to show you that today. But got a clip here from Jake Tapper. He's coming out and promoting his book now. This is from earlier this week. Take a listen.
Politics lead in the damning new details that we're releasing today about former President Joe Biden's physical and mental deterioration and how his family members and closest aides concealed it from the public. This is all.
No, Jake Tapper. No, but his family members and inner circle concealed it from the public. No, you concealed it from the public, bro. What are you talking about? His family members and inner circle. No, you and the media, you and other members of the media concealed it from the public. It wasn't just his family members and inner circle. His family members and inner circle would have been unable to do it without you, Jake Tapper, without your network, without ABC, without Dana here. They would have been unable to do it without you guys. So it wasn't just Joe Biden's family and inner circle that were hiding this from the public. It was you, you, Jake Tapper, and your network, along with the other mainstream media networks that were hiding it from the public.
Closest aides concealed it from the public. This is all revealed in two excerpts that we revealed today from my upcoming book with Axios. This is Alex Thompson. The book is called Original Sin. It's coming out, being published 1 week from today. The book is based on more than 200 interviews, mostly with Democratic insiders, almost all of which occurred after the 2024 election was over, when suddenly they were more willing to talk. The excerpt in The New Yorker today reveals for the very first time what exactly motivated actor and director George Clooney to write his momentous op-ed calling on Biden to drop out of the presidential race, despite personally knowing him for more than 2 decades and Clooney's international fame as a movie star. Biden did not appear to recognize Clooney at that June 2020.
Oh, didn't recognize Clooney.
Headline, even after a Biden.
How could you not recognize Clooney? I don't know that I would recognize him on the street either, Joe Biden. I don't blame you for that.
Appeared to recognize Clooney at that June 2024 fundraiser that Clooney was headlining, even after a Biden aide told the president, quote, you know, George Clooney. And it wasn't just Clooney who was alarmed, so was President Obama, so were other donors behind the scenes. Even Democratic Congresswoman Annie Kuster of New Hampshire, who saw the event on stage, which was not half as bad as what was going on backstage, came away thinking there was no way President Biden could serve another term.
The video came out. Remember when Obama had to walk him off the stage? I have the video. I'm going to show you here in a moment. When that video came out, they were all saying that was right-wing propaganda, that the video was selectively edited. You guys were all saying that. You're all saying that. And I mean, it's just crazy. So that's the first excerpt that they released this week, is that, oh my God, Joe Biden didn't recognize the movie star George Clooney. And then there's another excerpt that came out this week, which I think is a more damning excerpt about this wheelchair issue, that they were so concerned with him falling that they were saying that he should be in a wheelchair, but we're not going to put him in a wheelchair, even though putting someone in a wheelchair is a medical issue. That's a medical need for an elderly old man. And if you or a doctor comes to the conclusion that this elderly old man needs a wheelchair, there should be nothing stopping you from giving him a wheelchair and assessing that need that this elderly old man has. But this is just an excerpt, and they're releasing these excerpts because they want the book to fly off the shelf on Tuesday. I wouldn't touch that book. I mean, who cares about reading what these guys have to say? You know, I saw it with my own eyes. I saw what you guys did. But this is a damning excerpt because it says that they realized that Joe Biden had this medical need for a wheelchair, but it was bad optics for the campaign. So they were going to try to get him over the finish line, and then after he got elected, then he was going to serve his next term in a wheelchair. People, I mean, crazy.
Details coming just hours after more stunning revelation.
This is elderly abuse. There's no other way to say this. And if Jill Biden was one of the people who realized that her husband needed to be in a wheelchair and she didn't allow it for the campaign, this is Edith Wilson.
In an excerpt published by Axios, that aides were privately discussing putting President Biden in a wheelchair for his second term because of his physical deterioration. Sources telling me and Alex Thompson that Biden's team thought it was, of course, politically untenable to have the president.
Politically untenable. That we think that he needs a wheelchair, but it's just not political expedient for us to put him in a wheelchair during the campaign. These people are ghouls.
Re-election bid. They took steps to try to protect him in the images of his halting gait, including finding shorter walking paths, adding handrails to steps, using a smaller staircase to board Air Force One. Aides would also accompany Biden across the White House lawn to Marine One or from Marine One, not only to disguise what was going on, but in case he fell. Doctor, White House physician Kevin O'Connor warned behind the scenes that if Biden had one more serious fall,
this is the doctor.
Warned behind the scenes that if Biden had one more serious fall, he might need to be in a wheelchair for his recovery.
So basically, if you read between the lines, that the reason that the campaign and his family thought that he needed to be in a wheelchair is because the doctor said if he has one more fall, he's going to have to be in a wheelchair. The doctor says he's going to have to be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life if he has one more fall. So this is a doctor saying that, I recommend that he be in a wheelchair or not be running around on the campaign trail. This is crazy. But they didn't think that it was politically expedient. And you're telling me that you're just finding out about this, Jake Tapper? That the media is just finding out about this? And oh my God, these books are coming out, and then this is my first time realizing what are these people doing? Who do they think we are? They think we're dumb. That's the thing. So Chuck Todd, he used to host Meet the Press, one of the longest running shows on in the media. The Meet the Press goes back to the 1950s. They've had some very esteemed journalists. People like Tim Russert. I wouldn't even put Tim Russert in the same room as people like Chuck Todd and Kristen Welker. You had no idea what Tim Russert's politics were at all. No one could tell you what his politics were. I know what Chuck Todd's politics are for sure. I know what Kristen Welker's politics are, but he was the host of Meet the Press, and he now has a podcast. He's gone away from the corporate media, and he's on the YouTube and alternative media because that's where the viewers are. People aren't watching Meet the Press anymore. He wants eyeballs. He has to go to YouTube. He has to go do a podcast like everybody else. But I played this clip a few podcasts ago because he's one of the people who are harshly defending the media or vigorously defending the media and being harshly criticizing the Biden administration and the Biden campaign and his inner circle and family and saying it was their fault It wasn't the media's fault. It wasn't our fault. And everybody sees it's the media's fault. But I want to play this clip again, and then I have a couple of other clips from Chuck Todd that I want to focus on. But take a listen.
Forgive me, but it seems as though it's also an indictment of the legacy media. And those reporters, you can say they were complicit. You can say they didn't care. They looked the other way. They didn't want to attack Joe Biden because they liked Donald Trump less. But I can't imagine this is a good thing for the media's credibility for the American people to see Biden like this.
Oh, I think the fault is not on the media. I think the fault's on the Democratic Party. So I look at it as the Democratic Party.
So he tries to make a distinction between the media and the Democratic Party. Bro, the media is the Democratic Party. What the hell are you talking about? The media is the Democratic Party. So he says that it wasn't the media, it was the Democratic Party. You guys are the same thing, bro. It's the same thing.
Okay, so
you make an excellent point.
This. Help me with this, though. Every time, though, they come out now, forgive me, but it seems as though it's also an indictment of the legacy media. And those reporters, you can say they were complicit. You can say they didn't care. They looked the other way. They didn't want to attack Joe Biden because they liked Donald Trump less. But I can't imagine this is a good thing for the media's credibility for the American people to see Biden like this.
Oh, I think the fault is not on the media. I think the fault's on the Democratic Party. So I look at it as the Democratic Party is the one that decided not to do anything about this. They're the ones that didn't speak out. I mean, at the end of the day, the press is only as good as its sources.
The press is only as good as its sources. What about investigative journalism, bro? What about going and being a scoop and digging up the truth? The press is not as good as its sources. The press goes out and it makes its sources. A real journalist goes out and investigates. What are you talking about? The press is only as good as its sources.
The press is only as good as its sources. You have bad sources, you're going to have bad coverage. You have good sources, you're going to have good coverage. So I get the it's I think easy in hindsight. And I would say I separate actual reporters from the protector pundit class.
All right. So that's the distinction that he's made. We've talked about this before. There's actual journalists and then there's the pundits, but they're on the same stations. They're on the same networks, the pundits and the journalists, and nobody knows the difference.
There was a whole pundit class that I would say gets conflated with actual reporters.
Gets conflated. The pundits get conflated with the journalists. Why do the pundits get conflated with the journalists? Because the pundits are on the same station, many times on the same show as the journalists. When you hosted Meet the Press, you brought pundits on to give their opinions on the same Meet the Press show. That's the Meet the Press format. So you have the pundits on your show. That's why they were getting conflated. And he says that he wants to separate the pundits from the real journalists, and they get conflated sometimes. Why do they get conflated, Chuck Todd?
That I would say gets conflated with actual reporters. They were the protectors, right? There was, and I'm a recovering member of legacy or traditional media, so I'm going to be careful here now that because I'm not going to trash my old employers.
So I think that's very interesting. I'm not going to trash my old employers. Who are his old employers? Who? This NBC Universal. That's what he's saying. This corporation. He's saying, listen to what Chuck Todd is saying. He's saying that the pundits and the journalists are different. Yeah, the pundits carried Joe Biden's water. Yeah, the pundits came on NBC Universal and they covered up. But the real journalists who are on the same networks, NBC Universal, these same networks, they have the pundits and they have the journalists on. And he says that the pundits and the journalists were conflated. They're conflated by NBC Universal. And he says that I'm no longer in the media and I no longer work for NBC Universal, and I'm not going to trash them, is what he says. Why aren't you going to trash NBC Universal? Because he still wants to be a guest for NBC Universal to bring him back on in certain situations. He wants to be welcome back at NBC Universal. So that's why he's not going to trash them. He's not going to trash the corporation. All right. Wow.
Good coverage. So I get the it's I think easy in hindsight. And I would say I separate actual reporters from the protector pundit class. There was a whole pundit class that I would say gets conflated with actual reporters. They were the protectors, right? There was, and I'm a recovering member of legacy or traditional media, so I'm going to be careful here now that, because I'm not going to trash my old employers.
Yeah, so he knows that if he has to tell the truth, if he tells the truth, then he has to tell the truth about NBC Universal. He has to trash his old employers. So he's defending the Democratic Party. He's defending the media. He's defending his corporate legacy media and all his friends in corporate legacy media, and saying that it wasn't us, it wasn't the media, it was the Biden campaign, Biden's inner circle, Biden's family. And then this is another clip of him on his podcast with John Kasich. Take a listen.
I think Biden was a failed president.
And I just think, wow, I think Biden was a failed president. That's the same thing Beto says. That's the same thing Beto says now. Biden was failed. Biden's a failed president. Beto's saying that now, today, in May 2025. Biden was a failed president. Chuck Todd, I think this is in April. This is last month, 2025, saying, I think Biden was a failed president. Why didn't you guys say this before?
I think Biden was a failed president.
And he thinks that he would have won.
I know.
Are you kidding me?
I know.
Who's telling him that?
A better leader would have made the country not want to return to Trump.
Chuck, I endorsed the guy, and I thought he was going to be a healer, and he was anything but that. Biden's people wouldn't let anybody near him, and the cover-up by the media is...
Biden's people wouldn't let anyone near him, and the cover-up by the media. And as soon as John Kasich says the cover-up by the media, this guy, Chuck Todd, has a reflexive response, because he's the one out there screaming that, no, it wasn't the media. It wasn't the media. It's not just him. They're all doing it. That, no, it wasn't the media. It's the Biden administration. It was the Biden campaign. It was the Biden's family. They did it. It wasn't us. It wasn't the media. And now you see all of these, I have a few clips here in a moment. You see all of these Democrats going on legacy media, and they're getting pressed on this about Jake Tapper's book. You know, did you know anything? What did you know? What did you know? No, the time to have done that, to do that pressing and to force them into a corner was before the election. That was the time to do that. And then now media's all being hard on ex-Biden administration officials and Democrats in their questioning of what you knew after the, books are coming out and everything. What'd you know? What'd you know? Why didn't you do that pressing of these Democrats and these people in Biden's inner circle before the election last year? But watch John Kasich and the media's cover up, and watch Chuck Todd's just reflexively jumps to defend the media, because he doesn't want to bash his old employer, the corporation.
People wouldn't let anybody near him, and the cover-up by the media is a disgrace.
I blame the Democratic Party. The media only can report what they can report.
But they didn't report what they saw. And the other thing is, they all want access.
They didn't report what they saw, and they all wanted access. And that's, again, why Chuck Todd doesn't want to criticize his old employer, NBC Universal, is because he wants to be invited back on. He wants access. And that's what John Kasich says about why the media covered up. And I don't believe that's the reason why, because they wanted access, but that's part of the reason. That if we criticize and we do real journalism on Biden, that the Biden campaign's not going to give us access. They need you during the campaign. How can they not give you access? You got to tell the truth.
And the other thing is, they all want access. If you want to get access to Tiger Woods, you better not write anything negative.
That wasn't the presidency I thought we were voting for.
No,
I actually thought we were voting for a guy who was going to restore the idea that this is how governance should work. Everybody's got a seat at the table.
Yep. But
and it didn't work that way.
Wow. It's crazy that you say that now, Chuck Todd, that you guys are saying that now. So this is one of the situations, like I was just telling you about, where the media has Democrats on, powerful Democrats like Chuck Schumer, and they're pressing them now. They didn't do any of this before the election last year, but they're pressing them on what they knew about Joe Biden's cognitive decline. And there's a talking point in here that you're going to hear a lot, because this is going to be a big story on, the book drops on Tuesday, so this is going to be huge. But you're going to hear a talking point in here.
I do want to ask you about something that has been breaking out of CNN. Our Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson have written a book called Original Sin, and they call it a cover-up of Biden's health and his cognition and his fitness, quite frankly, to be president of the United States. You sat next to Biden in the Oval Office February 27th. 2024, just a handful of months before the president took that debate stage. And it was later reported that you and other Democratic leaders were talking before the debate about having a plan. You and Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama. I understand you later denied that ever happened. But I am curious, I'm interested to know whether the man that you saw sitting there on that couch on that day, you were in there, you saw him up close and personal. Did you really not have any idea that he was not fit to serve a second term?
Casey, we're looking forward. We have the largest Medicaid cut in front of us. We have the whole federal government.
You're facing all of this because you lost a presidential election. And is that not Joe Biden's responsibility for deciding to run again?
We're looking forward.
That's it?
Yep, that's it. That's the talking point. We're looking forward. And you notice how she's pressing him on it now. Didn't do that before the election. Would have been beneficial to you as a Democrat and the rest of the Democrats if you would have done this type of pressing before the election. But we're looking forward is what Chuck Schumer says. And that's the talking point. They're all saying that when they're going to be over the next couple of weeks, when they come on these shows and they're asked about the allegations and revelations in Jake Tapper's book, their talking point's going to be, we're looking forward. We don't want to look back. We're looking forward, which is ridiculous because, again, and we're going to talk about this again in the next podcast, but when the Republican Party was in bad shape after the 2012 election, remember, I told you they did an autopsy report. They went back to look at what's wrong with us. What's going on with the Republican Party? What changes do we need to make? The Democratic Party hasn't done that. They don't seem like they're interested in doing that. They just want to move forward. We're just looking forward is what he says. This is Chuck Todd on CNN. And I want you to listen to what Chuck Todd says about this new talking point. We're looking forward.
All right. Senator Chuck Schumer, I know you got to go. I appreciate your time today. We'll see you soon, I hope. Thank you.
Take care.
All right. And our panel joins us now. CNN political commentator Jonah Goldberg, the host of the Chuck Toddcast, Chuck Todd, Democratic strategist Paul Begala, Republican pollster Kristen Soltis Anderson, both CNN political commentators. Chuck Todd, go.
He is among the people that are responsible for this. The leaders of the Democratic Party, the staff of the White House. And I have to say, I find everybody now talking to these authors, get out of here. Go home. You're part of the problem. Now you tell us. So I find, the reason why the Democratic Party has less credibility today. Here's an unpopular.
You have less credibility too. Do you understand what this guy's trying to do? It's so funny that they have less credibility. Their approval ratings in the dumps. Not our approval. Your approval ratings in the dumps too, buddy. Right here. Look, only 31% of Americans say they have a fair amount of trust in you. 36% say they have no trust at all. They don't trust you, as well as the Democratic Party. But yes, the Democratic Party has lost trust and credibility, but so is the media. I mean, he's sitting here and you can tell that it gets under Chuck Todd's skin that people are calling out the media at the same time they're calling out the Democratic Party because you guys lied to us. You helped cover it up. Yes, it was Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Jill Biden and the Biden campaign. Yes, it was them, but it was also you. It was also you on CNN and MSNBC and CBS and ABC. You guys lied to us. It wasn't just the Biden administration. This is, again, another example of them now pressing representatives from the Biden campaign and Democrat politicians on what you knew last year. Didn't do this before the election, but now they're being hardcore journalists because they're trying to separate themselves from the Democratic Party when you guys covered up for them as well. But you'll notice it's a talking point that we're looking forward because Hakeem Jeffries uses the talking point as well.
From the book, President Biden didn't even recognize George Clooney at a fundraiser the movie star was actually hosting for him. Why should voters trust Democrats when it's clear so many in your party?
Why should we trust you, Wolf Blitzer, when it's clear you covered up too? It's not only why should we trust the Democrats, we don't trust them, but we also don't trust you.
Why should voters trust Democrats when it's clear so many in your party went to great lengths to keep Biden's condition hidden from the
You
public?
went to great lengths too, bro.
I can't tell you what happened between George Clooney and President Biden. I wasn't at that event. What I can say is that we're not looking backward. We're going to continue to look forward, because at this moment, we've got real problems that need to be addressed on behalf of the American people.
So we're looking forward. They must have had an email or a meeting. They're all looking forward. But it wasn't just the Democrats that covered up Wolf Blitzer. It wasn't just Biden's inner circle that covered up. This is what reporting was like on your network the night of that fundraiser where Obama had to walk Biden off the stage because he froze in the lights. And that fundraiser where George Clooney says he doesn't recognize him in Los Angeles, where the tickets were, what were the tickets, like 200-something thousand to take a picture with Julia Roberts? $200,000. They're talking about oligarchy now. I think the tickets to this thing were $100,000 each. And then it was something, like another $100,000 if you want to take a picture. I mean, just outrageous oligarchy. But yeah, Biden froze up. Obama had to walk him off the stage. And this was the reporting on your network, Wolf Blitzer.
The White House press secretary used the phrase cheap fakes.
Cheap
the idea
fakes.
of cheap fakes. Let me explain what that is.
Cheap
to people.
fake.
We've been worried for years about AI deep fakes, that computer-generated images are going to trick people into believing something that's totally false. Cheap fakes are a little bit simpler. They're cheap. They're just distorted, out of context videos, chopped up in certain ways.
Chopped up in certain ways.
That's what we're seeing. That's what the Biden administration, the Biden campaign is so worried about right now. But make no mistake, they are worried about this. This is a real problem. This is not some made-up fiction.
So listen to what Potato Head is talking about. He's saying this is a real problem. The real problem isn't that Barack Obama has to walk Joe Biden off the stage. The real problem is that this video is out there and it's being edited by the right wing to make Joe Biden look like he's frail and old. This is on your network, Wolf Blitzer. Now, is this guy a pundit or is he a journalist? This is their lead media correspondent. It was his job. He's a journalist. He's not a pundit, Chuck Todd. And he's sitting here lying about what's going on at this event, using the talking points from the White House because the White House says it's a cheap fake. He comes out and he says, look, it's a cheap fake. The White House says it's a cheap fake. It's cheap fake.
The White House press secretary used the phrase cheap fakes.
The White House press secretary used the word cheap fake. So that's the word that I'm going to use here as a journalist. So, using the talking points from the White House. Cheap fake. This is cheap fake. I have the video right here. Look at this. This is crazy, people. Look, he just freezes up, and then Obama has to grab his hand and walk him off and tell us this is cheap fake. Look at this. There he is, froze. He's froze. The guy's a statue. Ain't even funny, man. Look at it. Obama has to grab him. He just walks him off. That's cheap fake, is what Brian Stelter said. And they all did this. All the media. Same the Democratic Party. Yes, it's the Democrats. It's Barack Obama covering up. And it's the Bidens covering up. It's the campaign covering up. But it's also you. It's also you guys in the media. This is Joe Scarborough. He was on MSNBC.
Challenge for the Biden team. Because, as I've said here on the show over the past couple weeks, I've spent a good bit of time with Joe Biden. I've spent a couple of hours with Joe Biden, sitting, talking, going around the world as far as talking issues, talking the economy, talking inflation. And I must say, when I was talking to him, my thought wasn't, oh, poor guy. My thought was, oh, my God. I wish Dr. Brzezinski were on the other side of the table right now, because these two guys, 50 years of experience, and Joe Biden hasn't forgotten it. He may get pissed off at a press conference, and he may be thinking about the Mexican border deal and say Mexico instead of Egypt. He knows what he's talking about. He circles back around, gets to Egypt. He might misplace a word here and there, but you talk to him for hours at a time. Is he slower? Does he move slower? Yeah, he's moved slower. Is he stiffer? Yeah, he moves stiffer. Does he have trouble walking sometimes? Yeah, so did FDR. We got out of the Depression. We won a GD war against Nazism and against the Japanese. But comparing that guy's mental state, I've said it for years now. He's cogent. But I undersold him when I said he was cogent.
I undersold it.
Beyond cogent.
I undersold it. I undersold it when I said that he's cogent. He's far beyond cogent. Is this a journalist or a pundit? Because it's on MSNBC. It's the same bosses, your same corporate bosses there at NBC Universal. Chuck Todd, is this a pundit or is this a journalist? And does it really matter? It's conflated, is what Chuck Todd says.
I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been.
Better than he's ever been.
Intellectually. Analytically, because he's been around for 50 years. And, I don't know if people know this or not. Biden used to be a hothead. Sometimes.
This is media. This is the media. You guys were covering up for him. It's not only the Biden campaign, the Biden family. It was also the media. This is, what's her name? Nicole Wallace, also from MSNBC, under the umbrella of MSNBC or NBC Universal. Take a listen to Nicole Wallace. Is she a journalist? Is she a pundit? It's all under NBC Universal.
There's a growing and insidious trend in right-wing.
Growing and insidious.
There's a growing and insidious trend in right-wing media, broadcast, print, and social media. It is to take highly misleading and selectively edited videos of President Biden directly from Republican National Committee social media accounts and then use those videos to spread messages virally to cast doubt on President Biden's fitness for office. Here is this headline from the New York Post, quote, Biden appears to freeze up, has to be led off stage by Obama at Megabucks LA fundraiser. The full video posted by Biden finance chair on Twitter shows something entirely different.
No, the full video shows exactly what happened. Obama had to grab his hand and walk him off the stage because he froze.
By Biden finance chair on Twitter shows something entirely different. Biden reacting to applause and then walking off stage with former President Obama.
Listen to the line with, Obama was leading him off. I mean, what are you talking about, lady? But this is the type of lying. Look, Obama's got his hand on his back the whole way, walking him out. I mean, the guy should be in a wheelchair, like they said. Poor guy, just abusing this guy to get him over the finish line. So Kamala Harris, that was the reason why they wanted to get him over the finish line, so they can get him over the finish line, and that this woman could be the first female president when they've used the 25th Amendment and forced him out. Yeah, they planned on using the 25th Amendment, but they just wanted to get him over the finish line so they could use the 25th Amendment, and then she could be the first female president. Look at this guy, man. You guys didn't know what was going on, media? Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on all these people. Shame on all these people involved, including the media. Oh, this is one of my favorites. Media. Where's the media? This is in Easter, I think in 2023, when they sent the Easter Bunny to go get him. Take a look at this. The Easter Bunny has to go get him. Biden, look at me. Look at me. Oh, go over here. We don't want you in front of me. Come on, people. Come on, people. They sent the Easter Bunny to go get him. They never do this to Trump. This never happens to Trump. When Trump is on foreign events, you never see the head of Saudi Arabia, MBS, or one of these other people having to go get Trump. And that was the narrative, that both Trump and Biden are old. They're both old, And then, this is just like the Easter Bunny. Maloney, has to go and get him, just like the Easter Bunny had to go and get him. And yeah, you can't tell me that they haven't talked about this before, that if Biden starts walking off Maloney, since Jill's not there and she can't be his caretaker, then Maloney, you're going to be the caretaker since we're in Italy. Yeah, so the Easter Bunny has to go and get him. Maloney has to go and get him. This is embarrassing. This is the way, this is Italian TV. This is what Italian TV saw. This is how they made fun of him in Italy. This is sad. This is embarrassing for our country, and you guys all lied. They seem to understand what was going on in Italy, but the American press didn't seem to know what was going on. So now Jake Tapper's coming out with this book, and again, it is pointing the finger. It is who's going to take the blame. Is the Democratic Party, Democrat establishment? Is the media also to blame? And now Jake Tapper is, because he wants to sell books, and the book's coming out on Tuesday. So now it's Maricopa. Yeah, I wasn't the best at reporting on Biden's condition. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. You were covering up for him, and now you're trying to sell books. You are shameless.
Think of conservatives now criticizing you and the media in general for how President Biden was covered during his administration.
I think some of the criticism is fair. To be honest.
It's more than fair.
Of me. Certainly, I'm not going to speak for anybody else. But knowing then what I know now.
Knowing then what I know now.
During the Biden years. And I did cover some of these issues.
I'm going to show you how you covered.
I look back on it with humility.
I look back on it with humility. If you buy this guy's book, you know how stupid you are. This was his coverage. Accusing Laura Trump of making fun of Joe Biden because he has a stutter. It was a stutter, is what he said.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
It's very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
You have no. I can't. It's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
President Biden embraces his stutter, talking about it. Well, Trump mocks it, exaggerates it, belittles it. He's sharp physically. I mean, mentally. Yeah. I think the question is physically, right?
Right.
More so?
Right.
Right. And the guy who's his chief opponent is only 3 or 4 years younger than him.
Exactly.
I mean, you have questions.
So do you see the narrative? The guy that's 3 or 4 years younger than him, they're both old. They both have the same, mental decline or whatever is what they're trying to say. That was a narrative that was put forth many times. I'm almost done. I don't have very much time. I just want to show you how he criticized the Wall Street Journal reporting.
President Biden's mental fitness and acuity. He's 81, and his memory, it doesn't seem great. It's not horrible.
So this interview that he does with Adam Schiff, this interview is after the Hur report came out, and the special prosecutor Hur said he wasn't going to bring charges because Joe Biden was old and feeble. Jake Tapper, if you watch that whole video, he's leading Adam Schiff the whole time, saying he's old. He's 81 years old, but he's not that bad. That's what Jake Tapper was saying.
And acuity. He's 81, and his memory, it doesn't seem great. It's not horrible, but
it's not horrible.
I don't understand the outrage. Quote,
I don't understand the outrage, is what he told. If you're a journalist, it's not your job to understand the outrage. You're sitting there with Adam Schiff. You're leading. He's old. His memory's not that bad. I don't understand the outrage. That's what this guy was saying. This guy's a clown. And you're an idiot if you buy his book. But then I just want you to notice this part about the Wall Street Journal, because the Wall Street Journal did put out reporting questioning Joe Biden's cognitive ability and his mental decline. And it was all criticized by all the rest of the mainstream media. And the Wall Street Journal is owned by News Corp. It's corporate media as well, but it's owned by Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox. So Jake Tapper, he insinuates that the Wall Street Journal article, when they came out reporting on this, that it couldn't be trusted because it was right-wing propaganda.
I don't understand the outrage. Quote, behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping, unquote. The Wall Street Journal is owned by News Corp, which is run by the Murdochs.
The Wall Street Journal, which is owned by News Corp, which is run by the Murdochs. What's the purpose of saying that in this report? is that it can't be trusted. It's right wing. It can't be trusted because it's owned by News Corp and the Murdochs, is what Jake Tapper was saying here. And which is hilarious because after the debate, after Joe Biden was exposed, he had the two authors from the Wall Street Journal on his show. This is after Biden's exposed as having dementia, and everybody has to admit after the debate that this guy's in cognitive decline. He has the two authors from the Wall Street Journal. Check out what he says.
Fast forward to June. The Wall Street Journal reported that President Biden was showing signs of slipping. The White House angrily pushed back on that article as well.
You pushed
which
back.
Only included on the record concerns voiced by Republicans, such as former Speaker Kevin McCarthy and current Speaker Johnson, but quite clearly reflected the views of dozens of sympathetic Democrats. Let's get right to the Wall Street Journal's Annie Linsky and Siobhan Hughes, who co-wrote that article. First of all, you're excellent reporters. That article stands up. It stood up then. It stands up now.
The article stands up. It stood. You're excellent reporters. The article stood up then, and it stands up now. But when you reported on the article back when they wrote it, you had to give the caveat that it was owned by News Corp and Murdoch's, that it couldn't be trusted. This guy is Jake Tapper. Like I said, he is the bottom of the barrel. So anyway, his book comes out on Tuesday. We're almost done. And Jake Tapper's bombshell book on Biden's mental decline could be made into a movie. New York Post is reporting that they are thinking about making this book, Original Sin, a movie, just like they did the book after the 2008 election, Game Change. Game Change became a HBO movie. This was all about the election of Obama in 2008 and the campaign between he and McCain. John Heilman was embedded with the Obama campaign, and then Mark Halperin was embedded with the McCain campaign, and they wrote this blockbuster book about that campaign, which was turned into a movie. So a lot of people are relating Jake Tapper's new book that comes out on Tuesday to Game Change and saying that it could become a movie. Mark Halper, who is one of the authors of Game Change, he has a podcast now as well. And I'm going to play this clip of him and what he's saying about Jake Tapper's book and the attempts by the media to point the finger at the Biden administration and Biden campaign and Biden's inner circle and not accept any of the blame themselves. I want you to listen to Mark Halper, and then this will be the last clip.
So Jake Tapper, his book coming out in a week. Here he is this morning on CNN, creating a whole new set of realities. Watch this.
You have an entire White House press corps, though, following him around. And I'm just curious as to whether or not this kind of trying to hide what was happening with the president at the time had an impact on the press corps. Like, why didn't we hear some of these details from what they actually saw and were
Lady,
dealing
you're
with
the
trying to get
press.
information?
You work for CNN.
Well, Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes.
Trying to figure out what was going on behind the
White House
scenes.
was lying. Not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet. They were lying to White House staffers. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress, to donors about how bad things had gotten.
All right. Again, amazing. True. Here's something true that he said, that Jake Tapper said on CNN this morning. True that there was a cover-up, that senior Biden officials worked very hard to cover up as much as they could his decline, including amongst other people in the government and in the campaign. That's true.
Absolutely
Here's
true.
Two things that are not true. Okay. And this is where the credibility is just so important, that people be honest. I shouldn't be the only one in the media being honest about this. It's bizarre. Okay. One thing that's not true is that you needed, that the cover up was so good that no one could see this, that we couldn't possibly have gotten to the bottom of this during the election. Again, it makes me mental. It was clear. I saw it with my own eyes in 2017 at a public event with hundreds of people. You saw it almost every day, not every day, but almost every day, both in what he did and the fact that he had such a limited schedule. So it is not true that it's only after the election that Jake Tapper could have gotten to the bottom of this.
Absolutely.
And the rest of the Washington press corps could have gotten to the bottom of it. The other thing that's not true is that the press is blameless. because they were more than just stymied in the telling of Jake Tapper. They were stymied from getting to the truth. No, they weren't. They were part of the conspiracy and the cover-up. They allowed themselves to believe the ridiculous spin on TV in public, and privately they allowed themselves to be browbeat. I know reporters. Again, I said before, I don't know that Jake Tapper was browbeat by Biden folks, but I know reporters who were. They were told, you will lose access. The New York Post lost access because they covered the Hunter Biden story. Reporters who covered any story the Biden people didn't like were denied access.
So he says that they were part of the conspiracy. The media was part of the conspiracy and the cover-up. I went a little bit long today. I have a great podcast for you on Monday, and I'll see you guys on Monday. Thank you for joining me.